Alright, so hey guys, I have Gary Lawhorn here with me today, and I'm going to be showing him as well as the rest of you the process of getting out your renders from ZBrush and setting up your rotations to showcase the sculpts that you complete. And this is how you're going to basically turn in all your assignments. So with the noses, you'll do the same thing. With the eyelids and eye sockets, you'll do the same thing. With basically every project, this is how you're going to be delivering the projects when they're completed. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to use Earthquake. This is just one of the default characters, example characters that exists here in the Lightbox, and I'm just going to use it as an example, of course, to show the process of the rendering. So first off, what you want to note is whenever you do renders, you want to make sure that perspective is turned on. If you're in 2.5D mode, which is without perspective, no matter where the object is on the screen, it doesn't change because there's no perspective. Something's further away, it'll get smaller, and if it's closer, it'll get larger, but as far as going left and right, you see he looks identical here as he does here, right? So what we're going to do is if I turn on perspective, just to show you, you see how he kind of twists and he turns? We see more of the left and then we see more of the right, right? So whenever you do this, always make sure your perspective's on. Your clients, your potential employers are going to want to see the object he created with perspective on, for sure. Alright, so for the rendering, I already ripped the tab over to the side, but I highly recommend that you guys do the same. So we're going to come up to the top here to this rendering tab, and we're going to grab right here and just drag it over to the side, make it easy to access so that you can get to all the different properties of your rendering. Alright. So with that said, we're going to go first into our render properties here, and within the render properties there's one called this Activate Ambient Occlusion Rendering. I want to make sure that this is on and it's part of the renders that we want to get from our characters so that we can do some nice compositing and enhance the render once we get it into Photoshop. Okay? So that would be the first thing, make sure ambient occlusion's on, exactly. Alright, so next step is whenever you do this, I'm going to be asking you for 5 views. So generally what you'll do is go to one profile, side shot, like so. You want to zoom, and kind of frame the character as nicely as you can. You see the bottom line here and the top line, and this is where our render is going to be. And you just simply click on BPR up here on the top. So when we click on that, it takes a few moments, but it'll go through and it'll render out all the different layers that you have selected. Okay, so that's why we turn on ambient occlusion, is so that when we do this, we actually get an ambient occlusion pass, which once again we can use to enhance the final output of our image. The SSS is part of this particular character. It has a specific shader on it, and SSS stands for subsurface scattering. And that's essentially like if you've seen, for instance, The Incredibles, like Mr. Incredible, when the light's behind his ears, you can kind of see through the skin. Or if you've ever held a flashlight up to your hand and you see the red, that's because the light is actually allowed to pass through your skin and it comes out the other side essentially. So it's not 100% blocking the light, and the light travels through. And that's essentially what subsurface scattering is. Another good example, I would say, is like a candle, right? If you light a candle, you don't just see the flame, you see the whole candlestick because it illuminates and it has the same type of properties. So that's where the subsurface scattering is in. Shadows, we're going to have shadows on. We don't have any transparency, but if we did, we would want to make sure that's on. So like a piece of glass or like a face plate for like a helmet or something that you want to be able to see in, see the nose, see the eyes behind the helmet, then you would need transparency. Alright. Once the BPR is done, you come down here to where it says Render Pass. You expand that panel, and right here is going to be where all the different renders we just created are for each of the passes. Okay? So that'll be under BPR Render Pass, again under the main render tab. Alright? So to get these out, you simply click on them, and I already created a Quake Renders folder here. So what I'm going to do is just create subfolders just to keep things organized. And I'll just call this one 1. or you could call it, you know, left side view or whatever you want, but just to keep things organized, because at the end we'll have,
What?
you know,
25.
25 exactly, so 5 renders for each one, and it really just depends on if we're using certain things. Like I'll always show you how to use the depth. The subsurface scattering we won't really use in our render pass, but there are some useful aspects to that. But for this, we're just going to use our shaded, depth, shadow, ambient occlusion, and the masking. So those are the 5 that we need out. I'm going to press enter to create that folder, and then inside that folder is where we're going to keep all of these renders.
Okay.
Okay? So once you do that once, each one is going to go to that same subfolder. So you just go through and click on the ones that you want and simply save them out. All right? So there's our mask, ambient occlusion, shadow, depth, and the shaded views. All right? So now at this point what we want to do is rotate our model. Now don't zoom in or zoom out. You want to maintain like the size and proportion of the character for each of the renders. So when you place them side by side, one's not way far away, one's not bigger than the other, and it looks consistent, right? You want to rotate them approximately 45-degree angle. I'm basing that off of like the belly button and the direction that the belly button is facing in. And then we just come up again, hit BPR render.
But it's like no exact. Is there an exact way to tell if it's at 45?
Not an exact way, not
Okay.
necessarily.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean when you hit shift, for instance, you know you're snapping to 90-degree angles.
Yeah.
But there's not one that I'm aware of anyhow for 45-degree angle snapping.
Oh.
But this, you know, I'm just eyeballing, and again, just don't zoom in, zoom out, and do those type of things when you do this, because you want to be consistent with the size and overall quality of the image that you're creating.
Okay.
All right. So this one, and like I said, these take a few minutes sometimes. It just depends on how complex and how many different layers you're generating. So if we weren't generating subsurface or ambient occlusion, you know, obviously it would go faster just because you're exporting fewer frames.
Yeah.
So there's a second one. We're going to go to shaded, and instead of putting it in one here, I'm going to back out, make another folder. We'll call this one 2. Yep, and save that in. Get our depth, get our shadow, get our ambient occlusion, and our mask. And you see how quick it is. Like once you do this bunch of times,
Once you have it
yeah, exactly. So the front view, we just hit shift, right, and that'll snap to our nice front view. We'll BPR this out, and what we'll do is we'll get all the renders out first that we need, and once we're completed with this, we'll go into Photoshop and I'll show you how to basically lay it out. Okay? Cool. So just give this a few seconds. Alright. But so far so good. Any questions? Anything that's
no,
sticking
I think,
out?
no, this is simple. I think it's
Yeah.
just when you get into Photoshop, it's
Gotcha.
just a few different steps.
Right, and then in Photoshop too, we'll again, just like we're doing now, it's very repetitive,
Yeah.
and that
It's
repetition.
Like once you know how to do it, it's
Exactly. When you do 1 or 2 of them, you know, especially for this, we're going to be doing 5, right?
Yeah.
And then for every assignment, you're asked to do it for the noses, you're asked to do it for all of the different assignments, exactly. So for this, we'll go in, make another folder. This will be number 3. And again, you could call it whatever you want. I'm just doing this to keep organized, so I know which one is which. And so there's our depth, shadow, ambient occlusion, and our masking, right? And then we'll do this 2 more times, so bear with me. Here we go. Rotate it a little bit. Again, don't zoom in and zoom out and that sort of thing, because that'll just disrupt, you know, it just won't look as nice in Photoshop. I mean, you can always scale things down in Photoshop, but you definitely don't want to be scaling things up, because when you do that, you lose resolution on that particular image. Yeah, it pixelates pretty bad, so you want to be aware of that for sure. And this just also makes it easy for me. You know, when I have a big group of students in a class, I can go through, look at the Photoshop file and understand, you know, where you're at, how well you did on the assignment, and that's why I'm asking for these different views. Because if you only give me one view, it might look good from there, but then you rotate it and you realize, yeah, oh my God, where's the back of the character or something like that.
Yeah.
So we'll save these out. This will be number 4. So there's our render. And there's the 5. Okay, and then one more. And again, I just hit Shift to snap it to that side view, right? And then once this is out, we'll head into, like I said, Photoshop. Actually, while that's rendering, I'll go ahead and get Photoshop launching up, so we're good to go there. And there's other techniques and things and different ways to handle different passes and stuff, but for these type of deliveries for the class, this is again just how each of the assignments you're going to be delivering should be handwritten.
Okay.
Alright. The ZPR files, which are ZBrush project files you can save from here, they're very heavy because they retain all of the history. You know, so you go to transfer that file or turn that file in, it takes an hour to transfer it over. The ZTL, it's a little bit smaller, but then you know I have to go into each one, load each one, you know, review each one. Whereas again, if you give me something like this, I can quickly go through and go, yep, nope, work on this. I can see what you did there. And within the class too, you'll also be asked to create videos showing the history, and I'll show you that here at the end. But the history videos are really cool to watch because I can see what type of exactly. It's a great way to keep track of yourself, and it's a great way for me to keep track of how well you're doing in these courses. Alright, so we get all the renders out. We're going to go into Photoshoppy here, and let me just to open up some of these files here. We'll go to the desktop and grab the folder and make it a little easier. Let's see, where is Quick? There he is. I'm going to put him on the secondary monitor here so I can just drag him over. Alright, so here's number 1, and here's the 5 layers for it, right? So we're going to grab all 5 and just drag and drop them into Photoshop so they're all loaded. Now the next step, we need to get them all into the same file. So you hit Control A, which selects everything, Control C, which copies it, and then on the render pass here, we're going to hit Control Shift V to paste it in place, because you want to make sure that they're overlapping each other identically. So we can close that one out. We're going to go to the depth, copy, paste. We're done with that one. We'll go to the ambient occlusion, copy, paste, and here is our shadow. So select all, copy it, paste in place, and that's your hotkeys again. Control C, copy, Control V, paste, and Control Shift V pastes it in the same location it is in that other file. Alright? Because again, you want to make sure they all layer on top of each other. Alright? So in here now we have our layers plus the background layer, which is the original beauty pass. I'm going to double click on this so that we can move it freely. If it's a background layer, it's always going to be at the bottom. And we may want to shift it around and put it here, put it there. So usually I'll just double click on it to ensure that I can place it within the layers where I want. Alright. So first we'll just move it up actually underneath of the shadow pass to start off. I'm going to select the shadow pass here, and then where it says normal under layers, it's being treated as a normal layer, so it's just literally overlapping everything else so you can't see. So what you do with this is you go to normal and you change it over to a multiply. The multiply feature eliminates all the white, as you can see, and it keeps your grayscales in there. So it basically, even though it's on, you can see there's enhancing the shadow details on our character. Now sometimes too I'll come in and play around with the opacity depending on how strong I want that shadow to be, but you can play around with the opacity as well to help control that. And that's it for the shadow. We'll go on to the ambient occlusion. Same thing, make it a multiply layer, And then here's the difference, and you can see it really enhances, especially in the cracks, crevices of the character.
Yeah.
You know, if the character isn't rendered out with ambient occlusion, and let's just say they make it a big expression, their mouth's wide open, a lot of the time everything, even inside the mouth, there's no like shadowing happening and things like that, and ambient occlusion will ensure that it looks dark, you know,
Yeah.
within those areas, yeah. And it helps a lot of the details pop out even further. Okay, so that's it with those three layers. Next, we're going to talk about the depth layer. To use this one, you're going to copy it like we did before, select it, copy it, and in the channels here, you're going to make a new channel and then paste it in. All right. Once it's pasted, turn back on RGB, turn off the alpha, and go back to your layers. And that's it. That's all you really need to do with this for right now. And then what we're going to do next is apply it as a filter. So to do this, we're going to take the three layers we've adjusted. We're going to hit Control E, which is to merge the layers. All right. And once those layers are merged, we're going to come up here to Filter, Blur, and we're going to do a Lens Blur. All right. With the Lens Blur, this panel will pop up, and you'll see here the source. Most likely by default will be none. Okay, and what we want to use is the alpha from the depth pass that we created as our map, depth map. So we're going to use alpha 1, and then it uses that image, but we can also further enhance this just by clicking in any given area. So like you'll see, if I click on this back finger here, which is currently blurred out, it's going to focus in on that area, and it's going to blur things that get further away from that location. So it gives it more three-dimensionality because it's working more like our eyes actually work. You know, they don't. Everything's not always in perfect focus, right? If I'm looking at you, the things around you are blurred. So that's to enhance that aspect. So you want to pick a feature. I'll usually pick the head of the character to ensure that it looks crisp and clean. And you'll see like the hand that's coming towards the camera is a little blurred out. The one that's behind the camera, or further from the camera I should say, is blurred out. And then once you're happy, you can also also adjust the focal distance, but I prefer just clicking. That's basically to adjust that. And then here you can, you have a little bit more control over how the blur is going to affect the image. When you're done, you hit OK, and then there you go. I'll hit Control D to deselect all, and that's it for the depth layer. And the mask layer I use because sometimes you want a different color background, for instance. And if I make a new layer right now and I dump, I don't know, we'll do a paint bucket of gray, for instance. You can't see it, right? That's because the black from our beauty image is covering that up. So with the mask layer, which is this guy here, you go to your magic wand, select the black area, right? Make sure you're on the correct layer. Select the black area. If you need to add any areas, hold down Shift, and you can add in other areas that should be black. And then we go back to our original image here, and we'll just hit backspace, and that'll delete out the black background. Okay, so you can see we could put whatever color background now that you want directly behind your character. Make sense? Cool. So there's one. Now another thing you want to do is make like a master file. This master file is where you're going to bring all of them together to create your final delivery for the JPEG. Okay. So for this, we'll go ahead and I'll just use, I don't know, we'll do like a typical print size. So like 17 by 11. And make sure that the resolution's at 300. Right, that's in case you ever want to print this out and you want to ensure that it has really nice quality. Yeah. So we'll hit OK. There's our new file, and this is where again all those other files are going to come to. So I'm going to just rip it off to the side here for a moment. We'll grab our move tool, and we'll just move him in to the scene. So just drag and drop him in there. Now he's going to be a bit smaller. We can move him around, but we just want to make sure that we have enough space for the 5 across. We could scale it up a little bit, but again, be cautious of how much scaling you do, especially when you scale up. When you scale up, you run the risk of it getting pixelated. So we don't want to do that too much, but obviously we don't want them to be too small either, right? So we'll just dock this back up onto the top there, and we'll go into the next one. So you can save this out because you might want to come back and edit it and stuff, but again, you're going to do that same process over and over, like the 5 times basically. So we'll close that out. We're going to go back into our folder and in the number 2, and grab the 5, and we're going to place them into Photoshop. And again, we'll go copy it all and paste, copy it and paste it. And we paste them all in, right? We can close these down, and then we just do our editing again. So it's just kind of repeat essentially what we just did. So we'll double click the background, we'll move it up. We're going to change both of these layers to multiply, and again, if you want to adjust them a little bit more, play around with the opacities and things like that. So we go on opacity and just dim down the amount of shadow or enhance it a little bit. You can also do several other things with it, but just keeping it simple for now. We're going to grab all 3 of these layers and merge them together. So that's our main layer with all of those passes now combined. We're going to take our depth layer, copy it, channels, new channel, paste in place. RGB back on, turn off the alpha, and we're all set for that one. Again, our masking, I'm going to hit W for our magic wand on the correct layer again. Make sure you're on the right layer. There we go. And then you can see there's a little piece right there that I also want to select. So I'm just holding down Shift to add that into my selection. Alright, so that's pretty much the alpha. Oh, and real quick too, forgot this step. Let's go ahead and apply our lens blur. Since we already did it, it's right here. We can do it again, but usually I'll go in and actually adjust it, because each one you might want to click in a different vicinity, right? So you might want to focus in on the belly this time, or focus on the ear. Again, I usually try to focus on the face of the character. That's where majority of the audience is going to, their eye is going to go to right away. So you want to make sure that area looks the best, and we'll hit OK. And then again, select out with our magic wand, backspace it, and I'll hit V to move this character into our scene. Right, so there's our second one. Making sense?
Yes, making sense.
Cool.
It's just kind of a
Oops.
logical thing,
Yeah.
comment.
Well, that's why, like I said, we'll make a video. That way yourself and anyone else who gets stumped on this particular process, is able to get it. And like I said, when the video, I'll post it up, and if you do get stuck along the way, you have a quick reference point to go to. And obviously you'll have 5 different times to watch me do the same thing, hopefully by the end of watching it a few times. And like I said, nothing's better than doing it yourself, because that's what really locks in the knowledge. It's like I've told you this before, but I used to watch Bob Ross all the time, and I loved him. I still love him. I think he's amazing. But I got the whole kit. I got the VHS cassette, Bob Ross, and I'm going to paint like him. And I set everything up, go and do my painting, and then I look at my painting when I'm done, and I'm like, looks nothing like the master Bob Ross. I mean, just looks nothing like it. It's like, unfortunately, that we don't live in the Matrix, right? You don't just get plugged in and suddenly you know how to do everything. Yeah, exactly. So we'll go in and we'll apply our lens blur again. Just magic wand. And you see how much faster I'm doing it now too, just because I've done it so many times, and you'll be the same way. You just got to be patient, and like I said, once you do it a couple million times, get your 10,000 hours in, essentially, you'll be good to go. So we'll grab this one, drop it in. There's our third. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to try and speed run through number 4 and 5 here, just so that you don't get bored by my voice in the video. Alright, so this is the next one. Copy, paste, copy, paste. There we go. And close these out just so you know which one we're working on. Double click the background. We'll move it up, and again change these guys to multiply. Play with the opacity as necessary. Alright, and then let's go ahead and grab our depth and create a new layer. Paste that in. Alright, so that's good. Apply our lens blur, and again go into the settings, play around, because you can see how out of focus this hand is. You might want to click on like the shoulder or something so that it doesn't get too blurred out, you know. So that's that, and then we'll go again to our layer here. Looks good. Backspace again so that we can put whatever background in here we want, and then there's one more. So the final one, number 5. Alright, so we'll grab all these guys, drag and drop. We'll go up, copy, paste in place. That one. Here's the shadow. And that should do it. That was the old one. And we already moved him over into our master composition, so we're good. Alright, so double click, right? Slide them up, multiply, play with the opacity as necessary, merge these guys together eventually. There we go. Copy this layer. Lens blur on. Select, backspace, press V to move, and we'll just drag it into the other composition and drop it in. Alright, so that's the process of getting all the images together. And now that we have them together, usually what I'll do is like our rulers or our guides up here. You can turn these on a few different ways, either from window, I believe it is, and in here somewhere as far as well, I know the hotkeys, but view, sorry, view rulers, or Control R is the hotkey for that. That gives you these ruler guides. So with the guides, you can drag from the top to make one horizontal, and you can drag from the side to make one vertical. Right, it's 17 across, so that's pretty much our center line right there, around 8.5. Alright, and place this where you're going to align the character, and then I'll grab all the layers that we have here, kind of move them down, and then you can right click to quickly switch between each one. And I'm just using that layer, or the line from the ruler as a guide to kind of get his feet all pretty much in a straight line. I don't want like one down here and then one up there, you know, like I try to get them, you know, yeah. I think most audience members, like people that look at artwork and view that stuff, I think just the nature of human beings really is, we do like symmetry, you know, the eye does enjoy that, so having it symmetrical, having them spaced pretty evenly, you know, throughout the shot, and the guy in the center, like in the center of the shot, you know. Exactly. So now we have that. We're going to merge all these layers together. We'll hit Control T and we'll scale them up a little bit. But again, be frugal. Don't go too far with that, because you will distort the image a bit. Alright, so it looks pretty good. And then from here, I would ask you to go in and create some titles, maybe a description for what you had done, what you had created. So this guy's name, I believe, is Earthquake, so we'll come up here and just type in Earthquake event. Oh, what happened? Get rid of you. Type tool, okay. Earthquake, and I'll capitalize the quake there. So we get the name. Now putting it up here, it's going to be tiny. Doesn't really look too good, right? So we'll Control T, scale it up a little bit. It is still considered text, so you can scale it as much as you need, and it won't distort. So that's the name of the character. Down here in the side, you would generally be asked to go in and sign off on your name. So, you know, I'm not sure exactly who. I'll just call Art, but you know, you put your name down here. Okay. You know, sign off on your artwork. Show some pride in it, and you know, just sign off. Other things you can do to enhance this further is a lot of the time, what I like to do is show like at least like one close-up of the character as well. You know, so you, yeah, the head or any like major feature. Like I wouldn't do like the bottom of his foot. Like everyone, look at this. You know, look at his toe or whatever, or just the belly. I think would be a little weird, you know, just to have a shot like that sticking in the background. So yeah, you do want to like kind of frame the head. And for this one, I'll just do like a 3/4 angle view. And let's get tight in there. So something like that can work. You're going to want a little bit of that right shoulder in the shot because I think it looks cool just to see that flare, right? And just frame it up nice, okay? And then we'll do one more BPR here and let it do its thing. But this is so that you can also show like a nice close-up, because from far away, you know, it looks cool, but how detailed is it really? Exactly. You got pores and little details and dimples and, you know, the makeup and all the different features, but from afar, you know, you can't really see it. So this just, again, it allows me too, whenever I'm grading, to oh my God, look what Garrett did. You know, like look how detailed he went with the teeth, or you know, he's got a little bug or a piece of food in between there, you know, or whatever. Like that attention to detail is really gonna help capture your audience members and make sure that you know you're showcasing the best artwork you can.
You would want to put like something like this, like in the background.
Yeah, I'll show you here in a second. We'll composite it like we did with the others, and then we'll find a nice spot in our composition to place it. Alright? Because like he'll get cut off here, he'll get cut off there. You know, the whole render is just going to consist of this area. We'll place it into our scene here in a second. So there's our shot, and then this one we'll just call it, I guess, close up. And like always, we just click on them to get all the layers out, and then we'll open them up in here. And this is the same thing. I know it's repetitive, but like I said, like you do it so many times, you will get the process down, I guarantee. Repetition is key. Alright, so there's the depth pass and finally the shadow pass there. Alright, and we can remove the other layers. And again, double click on the background layer, we'll push it up. These guys will become multiply. Oops. Eventually, there we go. And you see this got really dark. I'm not really liking how the shadow rendered out so much either. But we'll just take that opacity and dim it down, and you see it lightens up the skin. We still get those details, but it's not quite so harsh. Yeah, exactly. Alright, so these guys will merge together. Here's our depth layer again. Same as before. And then here is our mask. And the mask again, we're just using that. Oops. We're just using that to cut out the background. So no matter what color or whatever you decide to put back there, as your background element, it works. Just delete that out from that one. And we'll bring that in. So there's a nice shot, close-up render of the face, and then just placement. So I might scale it up a little bit, make it a little easier to see. You might also drop it down below. I don't like the overlap personally, so I'll just kind of scale it down a little bit further and just place it, something like that. Now for a character like this, I would also go in and put a description, some type of description to explain the character, personality. We already got his name and everything, but he's a big guy. Looks like he might be like a bouncer, or yeah, exactly. Just a little bit, so like when people see it, it's not like, oh, that's cool, but like the more you show of like how well you know the character, the better off you're gonna be. So, you write something like, he's a big guy, loves the, what type of food does he like? Because he's a big guy, right? So you might want to mention that. Yeah. And then, like, I don't know, maybe explain why he likes his blue mascara so much, or, you know what I mean? Like, what's up with the face painting, because he looks like a tough dude, but then he's got, interesting design there. Yeah. So that pretty much wraps it up. Once you're done with the description, you put your signature on there. Again, I just put art, but you put your name on there. Again, I didn't create this character. It's just the default character there. So I don't want to put my name on it, obviously, and claim it as my own or anything like that. Just using them as an example. So from here, again, you can play around with the background, put whatever color works for you. One thing as far as that's concerned is stay away from like absolute black, because a lot of the details and where shadows come in, they just kind of fade into that background, so you want them to stand out, at least something like in the gray realm could work, yeah, lighter colors, less saturation on the colors, so that the imagery stands out on its own, kind of pops off the screen. One more little trick that I see a lot of people like to do, I've done that with the skulls and other things that I've rendered out, but you can also duplicate this layer, Control T, and then move it down, right? Something like that. A reflection, or we could change the color of it, but it gives it some sort of like contact onto the ground. I don't know. I think it looks cool. It's a very common type of thing. You see like a lot of products do this and stuff, like product renders, like an iPhone, for instance, or something like that. A lot of even the Apple icons and stuff all have like that reflection, but we could also make them like black. Exactly. We would just select it, right? And then on another layer, I would go in, sorry for that. We would go in on another layer, I'll call them back in a second, and dump in like a darker color. Right? If you want it to look more or less like a shadow. Excuse me. 1 second, I'll call you right back. Alright, sorry about that, Garrett. Everyone's like listening. If you're listening to the recording later, you'll be like, sorry about the interruption. But there's just another view. And again, just kind of make sure, like if the foot's planted on the ground, you want to make sure that the shadow itself connects into that the best you can. It's really just faking the shadow. And then on top of that, you could also go in, right-click, and if you skew or distort this image, or you could warp it a little bit, so like the outsides could come out a little further, something like that. So you give it a little bit of an angle. Give that one a little bit of an angle. Exactly. Yeah, I mean the ground isn't just straight down, right? So it helps out a bit. You can also apply a blur to it. So I might do just like a Gaussian blur, somewhat heavy, and that'll just blur out the edges a little bit, so it's not too crisp. So once you're all done, you just save it out. I'd save the PSD file. Sometimes in the classes I will ask for the PSDs. That way I can, at least assess if you're compositing and doing this part of the process correctly. So this would be just a Quake PSD. And then you'll also save it out as a JPEG. And then the JPEG you'll take and upload onto Canvas on the LMS so that I can go through them and use the grade book to do the grading. And that way, like, next class you come in, you can see what you scored. You can inquire about, why you got the score you got or what can you improve on, and it just really allows us to do a lot of back and forth as far as that's concerned. So that's the entirety of the process. Thank you, Garrett, and thank you guys for watching the video, and I hope you guys got something out of it.